What if Alice's trip down the rabbit hole was not fantasy, but a descent into a breaking mind? Lewis Carroll may have encoded real psychological collapse and societal horror into whimsical imagery, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Wonderland runs on rules that seem to make sense until they don't. Here, logic bends, time folds in on itself, and identity slips through your fingers. Alice, the supposed innocent, steps into a world where up is down, cause follows effect, and every answer breeds another question. But what if none of this is random? What if the nonsense is hiding a pattern, a code built from inversion and contradiction? Take the arithmetic. 4 times 5 is 12. In the world you know, that's wrong. But in Wonderland, it's mathematically true if you switch to base 13. Carroll, the Oxford logician, slipped in a calculation that only works if the ground rules change beneath your feet. The dodo's logic isn't broken. It's running on a different system. This is Wonderland's first law. Trust nothing, not even the rules of arithmetic. Language twists in the same way. The caterpillar's question, "Who are you?" lands like a blow. Alice stammers, I hardly know, sir, just at present." Her sense of self is as unstable as her size. One moment she's too big for the room, the next she's too small to reach the key. Each transformation erases what came before. The line between sense and nonsense, self and other, reality and dream. Here, it's always shifting. This isn't whimsy. It's a blueprint for decoding the chaos. In Wonderland, every riddle, every reversal is a clue. The only way to survive is to question everything, even yourself. Charles Dodgson lived 2 lives. By day, he lectured on symbolic logic at Christ Church, Oxford, a world ruled by proofs, order, and exacting standards. His name appeared in mathematical treatises and university records, always precise, always proper. But after hours, Dodgson became Lewis Carroll, a photographer with an eye for the uncanny and a storyteller whose private amusements bent reality into riddles. The same man who filled logbooks with algebraic formulas also filled sketchbooks with portraits of Alice Liddell, the child who inspired his most famous tale. The original manuscript, Alice's Adventures Underground, was not meant for the public. Dodgson completed it in 1864 as a handwritten Christmas present for Alice herself, binding it with his own pencil illustrations. This private gift is strikingly different from the book the world would come to know. The infamous Duchess's baby who turns grotesquely into a pig does not appear in the first version. Only after publisher Macmillan pressed Dodgson for more spectacle did that episode expand into a full scene, its dark humor stitched into the fabric of the public text. Letters preserved in the Bodleian reveal Dodgson's own hand in these changes. Marginal notes that read, "Add more humor here," appear beside passages later made more bizarre. Editorial requests from Macmillan and Tenniel's demands for extra illustrations pushed Dodgson to amplify the story's strangeness. The transformation from private manuscript to published sensation was not just a matter of length, but of tone. What began as a personal riddle became a public display, layered with new shadows. The evidence is clear in every archival page. Wonderland's chaos was engineered line by line by a man who understood both the rules and how to break them. The plunge through the rabbit hole is more than a tumble into fantasy. In Victorian psychiatric texts, Henry Maudsley described patients who felt themselves falling into a private world, cut off from ordinary time and space. Alice's descent matches this exactly. Clocks spin backward, halls stretch into infinity, and her own body slides out of proportion. The experience is not just strange, it is textbook dissociation, a rupture of self that Maudsley's casebooks recorded in chilling detail. The story's logic warps further at the caterpillar's feet. Who are you? The question is a direct assault. Alice's reply, I hardly know, sir, just at present, is the confession of someone whose identity is breaking apart. She cannot say who she is because she keeps changing, growing and shrinking, losing track of her shape and her name. Victorian doctors called this identity diffusion, a symptom of psychic instability. Carroll gives it a face, a girl who is no longer sure she is herself. Even the math is unstable. The dodo's line that 4 times 5 is 12 is nonsense, unless you switch to base 13, where the answer fits. Carroll, the Oxford logician, knew exactly what he was doing. In Wonderland, logic and arithmetic itself become a trap. The rules shift, the ground vanishes, and certainty dissolves. The satire is sharp. Victorian schools drilled children on rote tables, and Carroll's joke exposes the emptiness beneath the surface of correct answers. Wonderland is not a dream. It is a map of the mind unraveling, drawn with the tools of Victorian medicine and mathematics. Madness in Victorian England often wore a hat. The phrase mad as a hatter was not just a joke, it was a medical diagnosis, and it was everywhere. In the cramped, dim rooms of London's hat factories, workers breathed in mercury vapor day after day. Mercury nitrate, used in the carroting process to turn fur into felt, seeped into their bodies, poisoning their nerves, their minds, their memories. Medical journals of the era catalogued the symptoms: trembling hands, wild mood swings, bursts of laughter or rage, and most disturbingly, hallucinations that left men unable to tell dream from reality. Inspectors described entire workshops where the air shimmered with invisible danger, and men shook as they worked, their speech slipping into nonsense. Mad Hatter's endless tea party, his riddles that never resolve, his sense of time shattered. These are not inventions of pure whimsy. They are a portrait, drawn from life, of mercury-induced madness. Carroll's Oxford notebooks mention a visit to a hat shop where the workers looked rather nervous, shaking their heads as they spoke. The connection was well known even then, and yet the suffering continued, unchecked, for generations. British law did not restrict the use of mercuric nitrate in hat making until 1941, when the government finally needed mercury for wartime detonators. For over a century, the cost of a stylish hat was paid in broken mines. The Mad Hatter's madness is not an accident. It is a mirror held up to a society willing to sacrifice its workers for fashion and profit. In Victorian England, the nursery was not a sanctuary, it was a pharmacy. By the 1860s, laudanum, an opium tincture, sat on nearly every household shelf, as common as flour or tea. Doctors prescribed it for colic, cough, or a fussy night, and mothers, exhausted by endless labor, measured out drops for their infants. But these drops were anything but harmless. British Medical Association surveys from 1864 show laudanum listed in 95% of home medicine cabinets. Coroner inquests, published in the London Gazette and the BMJ, recorded infants found lifeless, their bodies limp, skin waxy, eyes unfocused. The cause was opiate lethargy. Carroll's Duchess scene is no random grotesquerie. The baby, red-faced and squealing, transforms in Alice's arms, limbs slack, features distorting until it becomes a pig. Victorian medical reports described infants poisoned by laudanum as bloated, snout-like, and unresponsive. The resemblance is not a coincidence. In 1872, a London coroner's jury heard testimony of a child who slept for days, roused only to wail, and died with a piggish pallor. The numbers are staggering. Parliamentary blue books from 1875 attribute 3% of infant deaths, hundreds each year, to opiate poisoning, with the rate doubling among working mothers forced to dose their children to keep them quiet while they worked. Wonderland's pig baby is a case file, not a fairy tale. Carroll's text encodes a household horror, one so ordinary that most Victorians never saw it for what it was. The nursery became a site of silent tragedy, and the Duchess's grotesque child is its most disturbing witness. The Queen of Hearts presides over a courtroom where justice is a game of chance, not of law. Her verdicts arrive before the evidence, and the sentence is always the same: off with their heads. But this is not just comic exaggeration. The Queen's red and white roses echo the factional bloodshed of the Wars of the Roses, a symbol every Victorian would recognize as the mark of power that kills to keep itself in place. In Wonderland, the trial is pure theatre. The king acts as judge and prosecutor. The evidence is a nursery rhyme, and the accused never stands a chance. In Victorian England, the gap between the classes ran through the courts like a knife. Parliamentary records from 1864 show a labourer sentenced to 6 months of hard labour for stealing a loaf of bread, while a lord, convicted of assault, paid a £5 fine and walked free. Hansard debates from 1870 are filled with reformers railing against this double standard, but the system held. Carroll's parody is precise. The Knave of Hearts trial follows the real logic of Victorian justice. Those without power are crushed under rules that shift at a whim, while the powerful make the rules as they go. The Queen's courtroom is not a fantasy. It is a mirror. The absurdity is deliberate, and the joke lands with the force of a public accusation. Wonderland's law is the law of the strong, and the trial's outcome is decided before Alice even enters the room. The red roses bleed into the white, and the sentence falls like a guillotine. In the end, the only defense against such power is to refuse to play the game. Behind Wonderland's riddles lies a blueprint for every age that hides its horrors in plain sight. Today, arbitrary power and social masks still shape our reality. The real madness isn't in the story. It's in pretending these patterns belong only to the past. What cards are we still willing to call real?